feel standing tall on our feet. We can now decide it is time to take actions to make our city employees safer. I ask, in the last 7 months, what specific steps have been taken to make our employees safer? This resolution, it asks for the city to support legislation in Richmond. What legislation? As of last night, no such bill is filed. A council member who argued last night it was meaningless to show opposition to actual filed legislation now wishes to put forward a resolution in support of phantom legislation. It appears only in disapproval over the actions taken last night. We can find better uses of this council's time. Another point, I hear over and over, we need common sense gun control. Many here tonight will state that it already exists in the Second Amendment. Tonight I'll ask you this. Would you agree that the United States military operates their domestic bases under a common sense ideology? In the wake of several active shooters on military bases in recent years, U.S. Navy Yard in D.C., Fort Hood twice, and most recently Pensacola and Pearl Harbor, the DoD now allows, under a set of conditions, service members to carry a personally owned concealed firearm on military installations for personal protection not associated with the performance of official duties. Common sense is right there, coming at you hard. More and more, governments are seeing that trying to keep employees safe by restricting firearms in the workplace has not worked. The state of Kansas now requires all public employers that do not provide adequate perimeter security to allow employees to carry a firearm. Kansas State Code 757C20 if you want to look it up. How many active shooters in Kansas public buildings lately? Not a one. I want to thank you for allowing me to speak before you again, and I'll leave you with a quote. Authority should derive from consent of the governed, not from the threat of force. Any guesses who said that? Thomas Jefferson, James Madison maybe? That was Barbie in Toy Story 3. Only gets it, why can't our governor? Thank you. Thank you.
Told you I'd make him laugh.
Look, this is the guy, guys, right here.
The next speaker is Joshua Kellogg.
What did he say?
Just we're on live, so just had to get your face right there. So that's
Oh, I was supposed to be reading that.
Welcome, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Josh Kellogg, and I'm a lifelong resident of Virginia Beach, a retired Navy veteran, as well as a registered and active voter. I'm here to urge you tonight not to adopt a resolution supporting a future bill to allow localities to prohibit the carrying of firearms in governmental buildings. The resolution states, quote, that this bill would enable the city to better protect employees who work in and the city citizens who visit city buildings. This bill would only serve to disarm a law-abiding citizen. As a private citizen, I have lawfully carried a firearm in several buildings here at the Municipal Center, including here now as I'm speaking to you, and I have never harmed anyone. That's simply because I'm a law-abiding citizen. Only a law-abiding citizen can be disarmed by the law. Criminals, on the other hand, by definition, do not obey the law. In fact, if there were any truth behind the premise of this resolution, then how has city council chambers remained so safe in the midst of so many armed citizens and those opposing them passionately discussing one of the most heated issues concerning our city, Commonwealth, and nation on December 3rd, last night and tonight? We're all safe. On May 31st, 2019, an employee who wasn't allowed to be armed decided to commit mass murder, which is illegal, and attempted capital murder of law enforcement officers, also illegal, which is in the city or in the state which is second in the nation in application of the death penalty. He was going to die either by armed resistance or lethal injection. He did not care. But some of our elected officials wasted no time seizing the opportunity to use this tragedy to further their own agenda. In fact, that day, before the police had even cleared Building 2, and long before Chief Cervera gave us his first public briefing on the facts, Congressman Laurie was on social media calling for gun control in the name of the tragedy.
Yeah.
The resolution before you today is just more of the same. It is an effort to disarm law-abiding citizens in the name of safety. In fact, by creating more places that disarm law-abiding citizens and passing other bills that would abolish the death penalty and reinstitute parole, it will create an environment which is more inviting for criminals and less safe for law-abiding citizens. But the right of the individual to keep and bear arms isn't meant to keep us safe. It's meant to keep us free.
James McCool. Next speaker is Mike Fullbacher. Mike Fullbacher. Thomas Colson. And after Mr. Colson, Travis Scott.
This is going to be a good one. This guy works for public utilities.
Welcome. Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to tell my story. My name is Thomas Colson, Virginia Beach resident. I'm also employed as the City of Virginia Beach Public Utilities. I am an employee from Building 2. I was there May 31st. I'm here in opposition of the resolution. I urge to vote against it. Over and over, you know, we see evil people doing evil things. Good people become the victims. So we can change that. We have to stop creating these gun-free zones. We also need to work towards having a program that will authorize city employees to carry a firearm at work. Here's 5 reasons why. On May 31st, I feared for my life. Okay, that morning I dropped my daughter off at preschool. Before that, my work, I was in fear for my life. I had to text the mother of my child, let her know, hey, there's an active shooter. I might not be coming home. You need to go take care of my child. Now, I have, not only was it a living nightmare, I'm still living the nightmare. There are visions and things I just can't get rid of. And here's the thing. I crossed paths with the gunman 3 times when he was carrying out what he wanted to do. I'm still here. 3 times. I have owned a weapon since I got out of the military in 2007. I had a concealed permit when I moved to Carolina. When I moved to Virginia Beach, I did not get a concealed permit. But if I was able to have my weapon, I had 3 opportunities that I know I could have taken care of him without any collateral damage. The gentleman that I was with, barricaded in the room fearing for our lives, not only does he have a concealed permit, he is also a licensed firearm seller. If there's anybody that I would want to have a weapon, it would have been him. You know, we could have been able to protect ourselves. We could have cut out some of these casualties. I just want, you know, when I signed up in the military, I knew I could put my life at stake. I knew there was a chance that when I go to work on my shift that morning, I might not come back home. I knew that. When I came to work for the City of Virginia Beach, that never crossed my mind. I was like, okay, I'm working for the city government. I can come to work, I can go home, have no fear. Now, I'm scared. I'm scared. Every time I hear a knock at the door, every time I see somebody walk by the window, I jump. I'm scared to do my job. At my job, I am not safe. I don't feel safe at all. Thank you.
Travis Fox. And the next speaker after Mr. Fox is Karen Greenwald.
Welcome back.
Thank you, Mayor. Last night was a little cathartic. I got to channel my inner Patrick Henry a little bit. And here I am again. I stood here on June 18th, last year opposing this same resolution. I stood here last night. It seems that neither of its sponsors have been bothered to acknowledge their oaths. The investigation, nor the vast majority of the community here present. This resolution is nothing less than an attempt at violating our constitutional rights. I have said it before, and I repeat it today. If you believe that restricting my rights, that by sponsoring or supporting resolutions or ordinances or legislation which limit or infringe upon my rights in any way, you are unfit for public office. Just last night, this facility and its grounds were overflowing with citizens of this community vastly in support of a resolution to declare the city of Virginia Beach a Second Amendment sanctuary. While we did not get exactly what we were looking for, when compared to other municipalities, we did get a promise. We did get a promise from this city's council. They were reaffirming their oath, which included defending and upholding the constitutions of the Commonwealth of Virginia and the United States, and that they would oppose any law which would restrict the rights of law-abiding citizens. Those who voted against the resolution will hopefully reconsider their calling for public service or their vote, at the very least, as they have publicly declared their contempt for the very people and rule of law under which they serve. This resolution has very short memories, where their interpretation of what is and is not an infringement differ greatly from mine. I'm appalled that this resolution has not been withdrawn, and equally that the kind of people who would sponsor or support it are allowed to keep their office. If you voted yes last night, you must vote no tonight. Thank you.
Karen Greenhall. And then the next speaker is Linda Craddock.
Welcome.
My name is Karen Starling Greenhall. I live in Virginia Beach, work in Virginia Beach. In fact, I lived in Hampton Roads my whole life. I was born here when it was still called Stillwater. I am a member of the BCDL, and one thing I wanted to say is last night several speakers spoke about BCDL members and implied that they were bullying or intimidating. And BCDL was started by Phil Van Cleve, who's a very nice man. He keeps a close eye on us. The purpose of BCDL is to encourage and empower voters to lobby their legislators, and that's it. He insists that we be civil and polite. There is no bullying or intimidation if allowed if you're representing BCDL. So, but I am here about your bill. So now you are requesting authority to ban guns in municipal buildings. And I really don't understand the need to restrict the Second Amendment rights. There's no record of gun violence by an armed citizen going into a municipal building. I mean, I don't have to tell you, you all know that it was an employee who was breaking the rules carrying a gun who was the shooter in building 2. So there's no logical reason to restrict the gun rights of your citizens. And last night you voted to stand for the Second Amendment and to discourage the General Assembly from passing laws that would restrict our Second Amendment rights. And so tonight you are considering encouraging the General Assembly to pass laws that would restrict our Second Amendment rights. There's just no logic there. There's no reason to take this action, so I'm just asking you to please vote no.
Ms. Craddock, and after Ms. Craddock is Clarence Canterbury.
Hello.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I'm here again this evening to ask you to vote no for Resolution 13, supporting House Bill 421. While I respect anyone's efforts to make the citizens of our city, state, and country safer, I can honestly say I don't believe there is one thing in it that has any hope of actually deterring crime or criminals. We have an overabundance of gun laws already. Giving cities the ability to increase and create additional layers of codes that would change from city to city only affects the law-abiding citizen who causes no harm. A law-abiding citizen will obey the law and a gun-free zone sign. However, a person intent on doing harm doesn't read the sign and think, I don't want to break 2 laws today, so I'll just flip it and go back home. That doesn't happen. He or she forges ahead empowered with the knowledge that he's going to be the only one in there with a gun. This sense of security people seek isn't found behind a sign. If the shooter on May 31st knew he would face someone with a gun, he may not have done what he did. That's the statistic that we need. How many crimes are prevented every day for fear of the armed citizen?
5 million a year.
The anti-gun lobby makes citizens out to be intolerant, dangerous, and to quote Senator Sasloff, little children. Interesting, as the law-abiding gun owners he targets are just that, law-abiding, causing no harm. No one bill, including HB 421, will do anything to deter crime. They will only serve to handicap law-abiding citizens. After all, that is what this is really about, the slow disarmament of our state and our nation. I'll leave you with one thought. The unique freedoms granted by us and by our founding fathers are what make our country better than any other in the world. Refugees risk everything to enter our country looking for a better life. Why are there no American refugees? Because we're the deal. The reason we are the deal is because of our Bill of Rights, our Constitution, and yes, our guns keep us free and our government in check. That is why. If you pass this resolution, congratulations. You may have just wasted time and money on something that has zero hope of stopping violence. Thank you.
Mr. Canterbury, it's Tim Anderson.
Mr. Mayor, council members,
Well,
again, we find
maybe
ourselves
I'll-
here again tonight. My wife's dealing with 2 small children after a very long, hard day at work, so I appreciate your time. I debated how I was gonna approach this tonight. I'm a retired chief petty officer. I don't know how many of you have previous military experience, but in the Navy, the chief petty officer's job is to speak truth to power. Okay, when we see things are going awry, it is our job to disregard ourselves and our career and tell the truth. Sometimes an uncomfortable truth. Okay? I don't hold any of you accountable for the policy that was on the books that prevented city employees from being armed May 31st. That policy was probably implemented long before any of you were here. However, we heard from a gentleman tonight, one of your employees that has previous firearms experience, that 3 times possibly could have stopped that shooter. Once, twice, thrice. What we're discussing tonight is doubling down on that policy that cost innocent lives. From this day forward, if you proceed with this, the blood is on your hands.
Amen.
I was told you a policy was communicated, likely when none of you were here. But to double down on that policy is sheer insanity. Thank you for your time.
Anderson, and after Mr. Anderson is Michelle Riley.
Welcome.
Mr. Mayor, council members, I think the decision has to be tonight is when you make a decision, does it make the employees or the citizens of Virginia Beach safer? That should be the question that you have to ask. Were the employees in Building 2 safer because of the city's policy that they could not bring firearms to work? Were they safer? When the shooting happened, if someone had been armed and could have responded, would there have been a different outcome? Ask yourselves those real questions. Are gun-free zones safe? Are they safe? Why are there 15 armed police officers outside of these doors?
Yep.
Do any of you fear the people that are in this room that are armed? No. Somebody does, because there's 15 police officers out there. But why is that? Why do you fear an armed citizen? Have any of you been threatened by anybody in this room last night that would cause the police to have 15 armed in tactical gear, security outside that room. Did any of you feel that way last night? Why are they here? Are they normally here? Do you normally have that kind of security for a council meeting? Are you making your citizens more safe? How is this vote gonna go? 6-4, well, I guess 4-6, because that's what it went last night, right? But I'm expecting something out of you, Mr. Rouse, because you said something last night that I expect you to follow. You said, I'm not gonna pick sides. Don't pick sides on this. Your vote last night was no, because you said you're not gonna pick sides. So your vote tonight should be opposing this motion. This vote should be 3-7 tonight. And if it's not that way, you're playing politics.
Amen.
Michelle Riley, and after Ms. Riley is Derek Ray.
Welcome back.
I was listening to the police scanner on May 31st, because sometimes I just like to listen to the police scanner. And I couldn't even believe what I heard. It was awful. I think it broke all of our hearts. And Miss Hunley, when I heard that you were down there that day, even though I don't agree with you on a lot of things, I couldn't stand the thought of you being down there. It bothered me very deeply. I don't want nothing bad to happen to none of y'all. None of y'all. Even if we don't agree. Okay? Everybody deserves to be safe. Everybody deserves to protect themselves. You know, we just had a shooting in Texas. It took 6 seconds for somebody to take out somebody that was gonna hurt people. Not 10 minutes, 6 seconds. Our police force is amazing. I have nothing but respect for our police force. We have amazing police officers here in this city. But I'm sorry, I carry a gun because I cannot carry a police officer. Last night, Miss Wooten and Mr. Rouse, y'all both said that you did not think that localities should be making gun laws. But now here you are, saying that we should ban guns in our buildings. Like, so which one is it? I'm a little bit confused about that. You gotta decide. Nothing about not letting people protect themselves is a good idea. Don't you want to be able to protect yourself? Y'all are getting ready to build a Taj Mahal City Hall with security doors. Everybody doesn't have that. I mean, I'm a single mother. I should be able to protect myself. The people that go to work every day in these buildings should be able to protect themselves. That's not too much to ask. If there would have been somebody with a firearm in that building on building 2, that could have kept those people from dying that day. You know it, I know it. So please do not pass this. It is not smart. Thank y'all.
Welcome. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor Jones, I'm sorry, excuse me, I'm way back in the past, Vice Chair Wood, and the remaining council. Just over a week ago, a gunman opened fire in a church, and he killed 2 people, and would have undoubtedly killed more, except for the quick action of a citizen with a gun who stopped the shooter with only 1 shot. Under Texas law, gun owners are allowed to carry in churches if the church permits it. And this is why several others were armed and ready to defend church doors if a hero wasn't able to stop him so quickly. And my mind also goes to older people who probably came into the church with a lot of help. Just imagine if the person had a gun, no one had a gun, and those innocent lives would have also been more casualties. And here we are today, considering a ban on citizens' right to bear arms in public buildings. If last Sunday's shooting wasn't enough evidence that tonight's resolution is exactly the wrong direction, and we didn't even look any further than what happened in Virginia Beach last May. This resolution is a ban on members of the public exercising their right, but the Virginia Beach shooter, he wasn't a member of the public, he was a city employee. And city regulations already prohibited him from bringing a gun to work. But as we all know, people intent on murder aren't stopped by rules that ban them from bringing a gun. Can anyone imagine a shooter approaching a government building, this building, intent on mass murder, saying and seeing a sign that says no guns allowed, and turning around and saying, man, gosh darn it, disappointed because this whole plan has been foiled. There is no conversation about enforcing this ban, no cost estimate on security officers, no cost on how we're going to secure every entrance on every government building in the city, including even cost of detectors. What's the city's plan to enforce this ban? Should it be imposed? I don't see one. Have you? I ask the city council to defeat this resolution, which at very least will accomplish absolutely nothing, but more likely will give a false sense of security to its employees and citizens in our building, who will be prevented from being a hero, like a hero in Texas, because a killer intent on killing will laugh at the no guns allowed sign as he approaches unarmed victims, looking at them like sitting ducks.
Mark Beckman.
Welcome.
And then, W.H.
Thank you,
Abram.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, happy new year. We're back here again tonight, and I want to say, first of all, thank you for your work yesterday, last night, and I know it was a long evening. I think each and every one of you probably but you know, here we are back, and we're repeating much of what was discussed last night. And so, in the interest of brevity, I'm going to concede most of my points to what was already been discussed. I'm not going to repeat those points. I am going to bring up one item that I've not heard discussed yet. 15.2-915 of the Code of Virginia is what we call the preemption law. It prevents local jurisdictions from creating laws that are not compatible with state law regarding possession, transportation, everything else in firearms. And we have that law for a very good reason. It creates a uniform standard throughout the Commonwealth to make everything the same. Just like building codes are standard throughout the Commonwealth, it's to everybody's benefit. I remember the days before we had that, and you would drive down the street, you could be legal where you were, but because you drove over some invisible line on the road, now you're creating a misdemeanor in somebody else's jurisdiction. So it's this kind of thing that we actually need to keep up, and a resolution like that would be, as it stands right now, a violation of the state preemption code. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Abram, and then Leonard Johnson will be the next speaker.
Welcome. Will Agard, Shane County native, Woodboro. A veteran, Woodboro. Came here to show my opposition to this proposal, and also in case anybody didn't see my email, I'll read it to you. Common sense people love to wave the bloody shirt, but I can wave it too. One of my sisters was murdered in a holdup. She worked at the Gulf Magic Market at Eckerdale. She was a store clerk. She refused to prepare for the possibility that she might be robbed. She also chose to place her life in the hands of strangers, one of whom did not value human life. She made her choices, and she paid the consequences. But to impose those choices on others is criminal. Gun free zones are the antithesis of common sense. They are part of a philosophy that is repeatedly failed to work in the real world. Oh, let's just write more laws. We can change the world if we write more laws. They create killing pens full of unarmed victims. City policy created the circumstances where a killer could run them up through the ops building too. To impose those same circumstances on the general public is insane. The one last thing is, if you really want reform, you will oppose this proposal and abolish the city policy concerning its employees.
Mr. Johnson, after Mr. Johnson, Jimmy Frost.
Welcome back.
Thank you. I know you guys probably know who I am. I'm not gonna hand it over to those folks who've already hit, because we wouldn't have time. So,
What's the vice mayor's last name?
it's interesting to see that some of you are just not capable of learning. I mean, what would happen less than a year ago?
Who's the guy to the right of Dyer?
That's Louis Jones. I
think he used to be vice mayor. Gotcha.
So, you want common sense? Get a dictionary, read the Constitution of the United States, and focus on the Second Amendment. Very clear where you can define each word as you go along. To help you out. I wasn't there in that mass shooting. I was in no mass shooting. I wasn't even close. I was at home. I've been in that building many times. As some of you know, I was a member of the Wetlands Board and spent some time in there. I have a neighbor in there. I have friends that were in the building when this happened. And my heart sunk. Because if it was a Wetlands Board day, I'd have been there, buddy.
Is that the order right there? I'm gonna put it on Facebook.
I don't fear saving my fellow friends, law-abiding citizens, people I don't know. We've got to protect each other. This law that you guys come up with,
yeah, right, but he's not
I
here.
don't know why I care. I tell you what, I used to live in Norfolk. My front door is I was held at gunpoint with punks threatening to kill me. And I went like this. And I had nothing. And all I could do was beg for my life. Police station, 2 blocks from my house. 2 blocks. You know how long it took the police to get there? 30 plus minutes. 2 blocks. Wow, amazing. How close was the police station to building 2? Pretty damn close. Still took a long time for them to get there when their life is on the line. I'm not gonna inject myself into anybody's shoes that have been through that. I haven't been through that, but I've been close. I'm not like some of the members on city council that want to claim to be somewhere. I asked you, were you in building 2? I don't think so. When you were senior at Virginia Tech, were you in the building? I didn't think so. Please do not insult this gentleman right here who lived through that. I think he lived through it. There are plenty of people here that would have gone to that organization to help those people and give them support if they were allowed. They weren't allowed. You happen to be city council, you could go. So don't inject yourself into their shoes. You don't know what they've been through, you don't know what I've been through. And I'm not gonna give up my family's safety for nothing. They can pass whatever law they want. I will not comply. Some of you know where I live. Come on. I will not comply!
Good evening. I can't say what was going through the mind of the building to assailant. I'm confident in the assumption.
Please, sir. Start again.
I can't say what was going through the mind of the building to assailant. I'm confident in the assumption he knew full well that he was planning something that would violate volumes of policies as well as laws, and he just didn't care. Can someone anywhere say with confidence when or even if these policies or laws ever deterred this or indeed anyone intent on doing harm? You can't, because they don't. And on May 31st, they didn't. I'm also sure the assailant knew it was unlikely his intended victims would be harmed. So to even suggest another prohibition brought forth by another politician would be anything more than a complete waste of time is to insult the intelligence of anyone who can read and understand Dr. Seuss. Tragic as they all are, there's one common factor in all these mass shootings as well as other gun-related crimes, whether they are carefully planned or crimes of opportunity. The criminal counted on the inability of their victim to fight back on equal terms. This is why police stations or gun stores usually aren't targeted, because criminals know people in these locations have guns, will shoot back, and good marksmanship is frequently practiced and rewarded. This lapel sticker, many including myself are wearing tonight, makes a very simple statement: guns save lives. One victim of Building 2 knew that and understood that to be true. She also gave serious consideration to putting her job at risk just to have the chance at saving her own life. I dare say she also knew policies or laws
printed on paper wouldn't protect or save her. Some could make the argument her compliance with city policy is the very thing that cost her her life, and therein lies the real tragedy. You all know what I do for a living and how long I've been at it, so allow me to pay you the compliment of being entirely candid in my analysis of what's happening here, as though I were one of your campaign staff or running your campaign. A meaningful legislative proposal usually has some achievable and tangible goals with an eye towards solving a real problem. This proposal has neither. They're just more words on paper. This proposal is a garden variety effort to raise a politician's name ID in the eye of the voters. A proposal that has zero chance of stopping crime. Look at me, I brought you more words on paper. So please, don't buy into false hope, don't try to sell us false hope, and stop using tragic events to advance political fortunes and just admit what most already know. We don't have any real ideas to achieve the objectives of reducing gun violence, and these meaningless proposals are a waste of everyone's time. Failing that, perhaps we should look to Texas as our example, because they found a way to solve this problem in just 6 seconds. Yippee-ki-yay.
Timothy Culhane.
Welcome. Good evening, council mayor, council members, and mayor. When I stated last night that I was making my first stand to keep and bear arms, I really didn't know I was going to be here again within 24 hours. But here we are. City of Virginia Beach is still watching, the state is still watching, the country is still watching, and the world is still watching what's taking place in our city and across the state. And so I want to be clear that when history is written, let's talk about last night, and let history show that the last names of Abbott, Berlucci, Moss, Dyer, Wilson, and Wood stood with their citizens and did their part to protect and represent your affirmative votes last night took courage and conviction. Unfortunately, I'm here again tonight because I have to ask you to repeat that same courage and conviction. Equally, no matter what word craft they attempted to use last night, the fact is the names Henley, Jones, Rouse, and Wooten voted against the Constitution. Tower's not here, I would have covered. I don't have enough time for him. That cannot be disguised. Miss Wooten, who I watched outside on television, made so many troubling comments after I left these chambers, I can't get to them all tonight. I don't have enough time to cover all of her comments, but the resolution before you is why I'm here. This evening, this resolution will have no impact on a criminal. Mayor Dyer, I'm thankful that last June, you exercised sound judgment throughout this process, just as you did last night and after the tragedy. Had you not exercised that judgment and allowed this council to act hastily, the entanglement and crossover of laws being proposed and against these citizens will be impossible to navigate for a law-abiding citizen and create havoc, even for those who try, and even those like me who are up to speed as to what's going on. As the meeting started last night, a new proposal in Richmond was introduced that would make it a crime to leave your weapon in your vehicle, even if locked in your glove box. Think about that. If Ms. Wooten's proposal passes tonight, your own city employees who you've heard from who are disarmed coming into this building can't even safely put their weapon in their vehicle without facing criminal penalties and a fine of up to $2,500. It makes no sense. Further, so would every visitor to the DMV, which I am one downstairs, would once again make a law-abiding citizen a criminal. None of this makes any sense, and I'm at a loss for words. It makes zero sense to think that criminals care about your laws. Instead, I would argue that this council has never had a more safe meeting than you had last night, and one that like you're having tonight. I think I'm out of time, so I didn't get a chance to properly thank you for your time last night when I ran short. So thank you very much for all of your councilmen. Even if we do disagree, thank you for listening.
Timothy Culhane and then Jacob Swab.
Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the council. I have nothing to say because the mood struck me today, and I said I need to come up here and tell you from my heart what I'm feeling. Ms. Wooten, I know you've taken a beating tonight, but I do want to tell you, even though I'm standing here vehemently opposed to your resolution, I do respect the fact that you understand that this is a life and death decision that we're making here tonight. And I thank you for understanding that. I'm just here to tell you why I'm opposed to it. The victim myself of an armed robbery, I began carrying a weapon many years ago, decades ago. I used to carry it openly. Unlike some people are saying here recently, it was never to intimidate anyone. It was purely because I thought it was what I needed to do to protect myself, totally selfish. Then I saw people were upset with it. They would get scared in stores, so I got my concealed permit. For the last dozen years or so, I've carried concealed almost every single day. Anywhere I can, everywhere I can. If I'm not allowed to legally carry there, I avoid the place like a plague. I began to realize when I saw shootings in the news that there weren't a ton of people like me, like I thought there was. And I realized what a great responsibility carrying that weapon became. And I trained, and I learned, and I practiced, and I steeled myself to the idea that someday I may have to protect other people. And I'm okay with that. God forbid I ever have to. I damn sure don't want to. But if I have to, I beg of you, do not handcuff me further from being able to do that for my community. If not for me, if not for these people here, I leave you with one question. Do you have enough regard for yourselves and for the people that love you and would mourn for you to allow someone like me or people like me to at least try and help in a tragic situation? Thank you for your time.
And then Mr. Karen, and then Sabrina Brown.
Alright, welcome to City Council. So, I'm from Maryland. We are pretty much a gun-free zone in the whole state, so I'm here to tell y'all what gun-free zones do to y'all. I've made Virginia Beach my home. I'm proud to be here. So, I'm gonna tell you, we have what is referred to as common sense gun control, and I can tell you right now it's ineffective. And I don't want to see the Commonwealth end up like that. I don't want to see Virginia Beach be like that, because people like Ms. Wooten, and I'm sorry to call you out like this, but you reintroduced this bill from June. Governor Northam and Dick Saslaw and other so-called representatives who aren't representing the people are proposing this legislation that will turn us into felons for protecting ourselves. These don't reduce crimes. If you look closely at Baltimore, the largest city in my home state, the murder rate keeps rising, and it's a gun-free zone in the whole state. It's a gun-free zone in Baltimore. It's not doing anything. In other words, the laws failed. Instead, law-abiding citizens are impacted, and the crime and murder rate increased. We can all look and see that's a massive failure. So, well, shoot, I just kind of choked up. I actually wasn't prepared to do this.
You got it, man.
I tried to write a speech for y'all. So, hold up, let me get my bearing. So I watched my home county of Charles County. I watched the murder rate, I watched the crime rate increase there as well when we became pretty much a gun-free zone. Like I said, it's ineffective. Now, let me ask y'all, if you had the opportunity to defend yourself, would you take it? Would you? See, all these people, we understand. We put down our lives to defend all of y'all. I can't even do that because the government says I can't buy a pistol because I ain't 21. Amen. But yet I'm up here preaching that I want to defend our rights. I want to defend me. I want to defend y'all. I want to defend my family. Seconds count. The average mass shooting lasts 10 minutes. The average police response time is 18 minutes. Got that from the National Sheriff's Association. I know all about this stuff. My father's a law enforcement officer. So I've heard the horror stories. I know what happens. I know y'all gonna do what's right.
You don't got me all thrown off. I tried.
Mrs. Karen. Sabrina Brown. After Ms. Brown's
for having me back.
You have any idea where we are now?
Freedom of speech is a principle that supports the freedom of an individual or a community to articulate their opinions and ideals without fear of retaliation, censorship, or legal sanction. Each of you, by way of being elected, are fit to serve. The public places where state laws are preempted by federal law and no guns are allowed are federal court facilities, United States post offices, federal prisons, ranger stations and visitor centers in any national forest or wilderness area, national cemeteries, and aircrafts. While I support the resolution to support a bill to allow localities to prohibit the carrying of firearms in governmental buildings, I support it only with a plan to prevent firearms from being admitted, such as a security check-in process at federal courthouses. My cousin was murdered by way of gun violence. I have been personally touched by it. While I too am seriously concerned about being defenseless, I am more concerned about what could happen with guns freely being allowed in the workplace. We are assuming that all co-workers are incapable of committing such a crime. I leave you with an excerpt from a Springer Link article published in March of 2019. There were 1,553 firearm workplace homicides during the study period. Robbery crime trended downward from 2011 to 2015. In contrast, non-robbery crimes constituted almost 50% of the homicides and trended upward in recent years. Customers and coworkers were the most frequent perpetrators of non-robbery crimes, most after an argument, while customers and coworkers who commit these crimes were often armed at the time of argument. Some were not and retrieved a firearm from an unspecified location before committing a homicide. Thus, immediate and ready firearm access was commonly observed in argumentative workplace deaths. Conclusions. Limiting firearm access in the workplace is a possible measure for preventing deadly workplace violence and should be considered as part of a comprehensive, that's the key word, comprehensive strategy for addressing this re-emerging public health concern. Thank you.
Conrad Svenser, and after Mr. Svenser is Michael Spear, and then Ray Freeman.
Welcome back.
My ballot HB 21, 421 is proposed by Delegate Klaus. Do I believe this resolution will pass? No, last night was kind of obvious. Do I like it being considered? Kind of. It would definitely change things, and if the enforcement arm of such a resolution to ban guns in municipal buildings and all those security checks therein were considered and passed in January of 2019, well, something to think about. I'll say another thing I'm thinking of. We're in a municipal building, one that had freely allowed private guns in it last night and tonight too. And I had a councilwoman voicing her opinion was aggressively talked over as if she wasn't equal to them. In a crowd where some stated that supporting Richmond gun laws will mean blood is on their hands. Yeah, I'm thinking of the many layers to that onion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael Spear, Ray Freeman, and then James Shakespeare.
Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. I'm a Department of Defense contractor for the Department of the Navy. Every day I get to go to work and support those risking their lives that it's been my right to stand up and say. It's a blessing for me. On the topic of gun-free zones, they create what the military and the Department of Homeland Security refer to as a soft target. A soft target is defined as a person or thing that is relatively unprotected or vulnerable, especially to military or terrorist attack. The terroristic act of committing a mass shooting primarily occurs in gun-free zones. The creation of more gun-free zones generates more soft targets for mass shooters and inherently creates an advantage for the bad guy, as well as a disadvantage for myself, the good guy. I implore you to oppose item I-13. Thank you.
Terry Graham, James Packberry, and Terry Santori.
Good evening, Mayor Dyer,
Welcome
members of
back.
City Council. I got better things to do than be here. I encourage you to vote no to this. Sabrina, you just dead wrong on this issue, and so are you, Aaron. But this is a procedural thing. You're not even prepared to vote on this. What bill are you talking about? I went through your packet. You're not talking about any particular bill. Vincent Smith got up here and told you phantom bill. This is a blank check, Sabrina. Your resolution says any bill that would enable the city to better protect their employees, which you know is false, and then authorize localities to adopt an ordinance to prohibit firearms, ammunition, blah, 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 in any government building or used by the government. However, you heard tonight someone bring up the topic of House Bill 421, which this would apply as an endorsement. Have any of you actually read the bill? By show of hands, have you read House Bill 421? You guys aren't going to answer that question. Yet you want to pass a resolution supporting a bill you haven't read. Are you nuts? Where's the due diligence in that? Mr. Moss, earlier tonight you said trust but verify while you were talking about a land use. Trust but verify is exactly what every one of you with your fiduciary responsibility should be doing. Not putting forth resolutions for non-existent legislation. The bill that Glenn Davis wrote and Delegate Fowler co-patroned during the special session is not filed. Neither Delegate Fowler or Glenn Davis have filed any bill about what you were talking about. That bill is gone, Sabrina. So what are you doing? On the very face of this, you need to reject this because you're giving a blank check to legislation you haven't read. And if you do read House Bill 421, wait till you see what it says. It's authorizing you to rule firearms out anywhere in Virginia Beach, or carrying them, or possession, or sale of them, to sue gun manufacturers. That's what you would be endorsing with this blank check, because it's giving a free ride to say that you're endorsing to Richmond crap legislation like that. This is ridiculous. You guys can do better. Thank you.
Terry Santori, and then Sean Flatley.
Welcome.
My wife works in a gun-free zone, and to be honest with you, that scares me every day. But she is, by my opinion, the world's best teacher, so I have to get over it. I don't think gun-free zones are common sense, whatever that is. My father always told me growing up, common sense is not so common anymore. But I do feel a little bit better after last night with the majority vote. If that is a relationship with tonight, then everybody rest easy and makes me feel a lot better. So thank you.
Terry Santori, Sean Flatley, and then Robert Dean.
Welcome.
Hey, thank you. 6 months ago, when this was first brought up, Ms. Wooten, she said that your council should be in a hurry to vote for this because Richmond was in a hurry. And last night, we had a proposal, and she said we should wait and think about it. And I hope 6 months is enough to get people from the other side of the subject, you know, time enough to get in here and speak. And I congratulate you on your personal growth and your newfound patience. And I'd just like to say, a lot's been talked about that church in Texas and about how fast the problem got solved. One thing I haven't heard people mention that I've seen that I liked was there was a problem. The problem was solved with one shot. Several other people drew weapons. And as soon as the problem was over, just so there would be no confusion, all those weapons were put away in short order. And I'd also like to mention that some people want to blame availability of weapons. You know, some people would blame Cain for killing Abel with a rock because he grabbed the rock and he used it. Other people would blame God for making the rock. You know, I'm not in that camp. You know, another thought, the people who helped Anne Frank were breaking the law. And the people who killed Anne Frank were obeying it. Lastly, if people can take your weapons away from you, there just really ain't anything else that can't be taken from you. Thank you.
Flatley, Robert Dean, and Gary Richards.
Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Sean Flatley. I am a resident of Virginia Beach. I'm a law-abiding citizen. I work 40 plus hours every day in the city of Portsmouth. I own property in the city of Suffolk. I'm in a lot of cities a lot of the time. And I'm not going to come at this from the whether or not a gun-free zone is safer or less safe than a non-gun-free zone, right? What I'm looking at is the ability for the localities to independently and apart from each other set different laws wherever I'm going to be traveling on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. What I do know the gun-free zone does is makes me make a decision. Okay? If I carry in a part of my everyday life legally, right, I now need to make a decision where I'm going to go. And if I have to go to a place where I'm not allowed to carry, then I have another decision to make. Do I leave this firearm at home? Do I leave it in a car unattended while I go in and do my business in such localities? Or do I break the law and take it into that place, right? So that's not a decision I want to have to make. On top of that, I now don't know what localities have made what laws, and it's very hard for me to track, right? I don't know if I'm going to the city of Portsmouth courthouse for court buildings versus Virginia Beach versus the city of Suffolk. I don't know. I don't want you to be able to put me in that position. So, on that note, I urge you to oppose this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Robert Dean. After Mr. Dean is Gary Richards. And then Jeffrey Cannon, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to have the opportunity just to preface, before I preface my remarks, with the fact that I would like to thank our acting city manager, Mr. Lay, yourself, Mr. Mayor, and the Vice Mayor, and of course Councilman Moss, and your accommodations yesterday, Mr. Lay, allowing us to put the whole rally together without stopping a lot of the ability for the people outside to hear. And it was a wonderful experience. Thanks for your recognition. On this proposed resolution that's submitted by Mrs. Wooten, I would like to ask just a few simple questions. One, will this ordinance ensure that I will not be shot in a public building? And if not, why not? Will this ordinance stop someone from attacking me on my way into or leaving from a public building? Will there be police officers and metal detectors located at every public building? And will those buildings be retrofitted to only having one access as the ingress and egress? If the ingress and egress will be limited, how will that affect the public safety in the event of a fire? I'm sure sponsoring council members Wooten and Tower have requested from staff
the cost of these restrictions on beach taxpayers in the form of tax increases. I can't imagine this resolution was being introduced without a projected cost. That would be totally foolish and irresponsible. Where can we, the taxpayers, download a copy of the study showing the compelling data that this proposal is financially feasible? 1 hour of operation would be established restricting citizens from self-protection. How many buildings would be impacted, both city-owned and leased? How many total officers would be required to staff every city building? What will be the cost of hiring additional officers to cover the restroom and meal breaks? Mrs. Wooten, my father served 32 years in the United States Marine Corps, setting the standards for the following path of service for myself, both my brothers, and my uncle. We have a combined 73 years of service to my Corps. 4 Purple Hearts, 1 Bronze Star for valor on Iwo Jima. I have a squeaky clean record, having committed no crimes. I have a concealed carry permit with no violations, so with your initiative, you are removing my ability to protect myself from someone trying to harm me. I find this proposal outrageous and totally unacceptable as a citizen of the city. I've called home longer than you have been alive. I would suggest that you withdraw your submission of this resolution and simply walk away from this nonsense. It insults me as an American who believes in protecting myself under the self-responsibility and self-protection doctrine. You, Mrs. Wooten, put my life in danger when you tried to take away my right to defend myself. Shame on you.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Gary Richards. I'm a retired hospital foreman. 22 years of service. Called Virginia Beach my home since I retired in 1999. I rise in opposition to this motion, or the resolution, and my concern is that it will make me less safe when I come here and pay my water bill. In my opinion, it will make this building a gun-free zone and make it a target-rich environment for the crazies and the terrorists. This is not a safe world that we live in. I don't have to preach to y'all about that. Just let that sit. Our community has some experience with that here. Where do I want to go from here? Another concern is, when I was walking with the Marines, I found out very quickly that the best weapon you have to defend yourself with is the one you have with you. Not carrying a weapon will make me less safe. Another thing is, a lot of people have to keep their weapons in cars. We all want to keep guns out of the hands of the bad guys. Many, many weapons are stolen from cars. And we want to stop that. But this resolution would encourage and make this place a target and make those cars a target for the bad guys. So I appreciate your patience, and I really appreciate your endurance. It's been a long couple of days. Thank you very much.
Cannon, Don Abernathy, and then Neil Smith. Jeffrey Cannon.
Welcome. Thank you. A little nervous. Last time I spoke before elected officials was as the liaison for the Just Say No Club, for the youth, the elected officials growing up here in the city of Virginia Beach. Thank all you guys for all of your time during the last several days, I guess the last year or so, given all the events that occurred and the topics that have been discussed. During my time as a liaison with Just Say No Club, I developed a relationship with Mara Orgor. I wanted to impress upon you guys her personability, her willingness to listen to every citizen, her understanding that she worked for every citizen, And if I could just take a few moments of my time and ask all the chambers to join me in a moment of silence and respectful of Mrs. Oldfield. Thank you. And moving on, I'll go away from the seriousness. I'd like to thank all the women of the council as well. It's only been about 100 years since women could even vote, and now here you sit before us, serving and serving the community. And as it directly relates to my position up here, to